The most important game this weekend in the entire country is Ohio State at Penn State, and it's a must-win for both, but for different reasons. We'll explore that right here. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com and get yourself started today. Ohio State, Penn State, doesn't get much bigger than this. Plus, quarterback change at Iowa, maybe, yes, no. Well, our players of the week and our Tuesday tweets are fantastic as always. So things are getting pretty tight on the top of the Big Ten standings as we enter the final month of the college football season. So much so that I actually spent some time earlier today looking up the old tiebreaker scenarios in the Big Ten. I'm not going to get into it right now. It's too convoluted. Don't worry. We'll do that headache some other time. We still have a little bit more football to be played to get where we need to get before we do that show. But head-to-head play is the most important thing in the tiebreaker scenarios. And in head-to-head play this weekend, we have number 4 ranked Ohio State at 6-1. At third ranked and 7-0 Penn State. For the Buckeyes, this is the most important game on their schedule since, well, the Oregon game 2 weeks ago, which they lost in a heartbreaker. So that makes Saturday's game at Happy Valley pretty much a must-win game for them regarding the Big Ten championship game if they want to get in that. Maybe not so much as a must-win for the 12-team college football playoff. I think Ohio State could have 2 losses to 2 top 5 teams and still get into the playoffs. So in that regard, it's not must-win. But in the Big Ten, it's getting to be pretty important. As far as Penn State goes, they're undefeated at 7-0. And like Ohio State, we'll put this in a must-win category for the Big Ten championship for them, but win or lose, they're in great shape for the 12-team playoffs as well. But this is a must-win game for Penn State for another reason. For years, James Franklin and Penn State have collected 10 wins a year, beating everybody on their schedule, at least everybody that they're supposed to beat. But then they haven't been able to beat Michigan and Ohio State. They haven't been able to beat big teams in big games. That's the knock on James Franklin and Penn State. And again, it's come down to Michigan and Ohio State on their schedule. So, and let's be honest, though. I mean, few teams have defeated Michigan and Ohio State lately. But there's no Michigan on the schedule this year for the Nittany Lions. But there is Ohio State. And James Franklin and Penn State, they absolutely have to get this win on Saturday to change that narrative. Both Ohio State and Penn State have concerns coming into this game. First of all, Ohio State didn't look that great against Nebraska, let's be honest. And that was coming off a bye week. That's what made it even more surprising. I was surprised. Were you? Maybe it was just too long of a hangover coming off of the Oregon loss and all the disappointment there. Or maybe it was a bigger issue. We do know that the offensive line has been decimated with injuries lately. Josh Simmons, left tackle, out for the year, projected first-round NFLer. So he suffered a knee injury in the Oregon game in the first half. His backup, Zen Mikulski, injured himself in the Nebraska game. They got through that game, moving to guard, over to tackle. It's going to be a challenge putting that offensive line together for Ryan Day and company and Chip Kelly moving forward for Ohio State. Meanwhile, Penn State saw starting quarterback Drew Allar knocked out of the Wisconsin game, put a brace on his leg at halftime, tried to warm up with it before the second half and couldn't go. In fact, a few tears were shed at that point. He was very disappointed he couldn't go. Also, defensive end Danny Dennis Sutton and right tackle Anthony Donkow, they left the Wisconsin game as well with injuries. And these injuries on both sides could not happen at a worse time leading into this game. You want to be at full strength. You want to be good to go. Regarding Drew Allar, James Franklin, who is not one to give a lot of injury information to the media unless it's a season ender, he said Drew Allar's status might not be determined until just before kickoff on Saturday against Ohio State. That means Bo Pribula will get snaps this week. Franklin reiterated that Allar has played so much football for them that he can play Saturday without any practice during the week and probably be fine. He knows what's going on. He knows what to do. He doesn't need the practice. He's taking a lot of reps. He'll still probably be sharp. But he said the goal is to get both quarterbacks ready for the biggest game of the year. And with both the Big Ten standings, both very tight in the Big Ten standings right now, I want to take a quick peek at both Ohio State's and Penn State's remaining schedule. Let's start with Ohio State. Win or lose with this game. They've got Purdue at Purdue. I'm sorry, that's a home game against Purdue. Then they're at Northwestern. That's going to be at Wrigley Field, by the way. Then Indiana and the Michigan. Frankly, let's put the Michigan game aside for what it is for Ohio State. The toughest remaining game on their schedule is that Indiana game. They're ranked 13th in the country right now, and they're playing well on both sides of the ball. And they could potentially, if they beat Michigan State and they beat Michigan, and then they have a bye before Ohio State, they could be coming into Columbus with a 10-0 record against the Buckeyes. Yes, Indiana. Now, of course, this past week, the Buckeyes barely got by Nebraska, and that was a home game for Ohio State. Just the week before, Nebraska was at Indiana and got dismantled 56-7. That might be cause for concern, or at least have your radar up if you're a Buckeyes fan, knowing that the Hoosiers defeated Nebraska so easily and Ohio State barely got by them this week. So we'll see. Maybe Buckeyes fans, they're just hoping that just was a bad day against Nebraska. Time to throw that one away, clean up, and go on and move on to the next one. Penn State, they have games against Washington. They're at Purdue. They got at Minnesota and Maryland. If they could get by Ohio State here on their schedules, much more favorable to run the table. They got a respectable date against Washington, no doubt. That's the whiteout game. It's at home at Penn State. Still waiting for an official kickoff time on that, by the way. We'll get it to you as soon as we find out. It's either going to be at 3:30 or maybe I heard at 8 o'clock. This tells me it might be in the Big Ten network if that's the case. Anyway, we'll let you know. At Purdue should be a win. At Minnesota, Minnesota's got a sneaky good defense. And by the way, Minnesota also beat Southern Cal, and we know Penn State needed overtime to beat Southern Cal. So that Minnesota game, again, could be sneaky difficult. So keep that in mind. Then they close it out with a game against Maryland that they should be able to win. So maybe then at that point, we'll be getting into the Big Ten tiebreaker scenarios. And I would love to get some trash talking going on our comment section on YouTube with you Ohio State Buckeye fans and Penn State Nittany Lion fans. Go at it. Have at it. We'll love to hear. That'd be very entertaining for all the rest of us. And I like to jump in there too from time to time. So get the comments going on YouTube. That would be great. You're all invited to do so. Following the Ohio State Penn State game at 3:30, number 1 Oregon is at Michigan. We're going to go live. You know, we go live after a select game on Saturdays here on our YouTube channel, Lockdown Big Ten. We're going to, I thought long and hard about going live early, right after that Ohio State Penn State game. But I decided to wait 3 more hours after Oregon versus Michigan because I want both the Oregon-Michigan game to be over and the Ohio State-Penn State game to be over with before we go live. So, because I want to comment on both of them with live immediate reaction and get your immediate hot takes as well on the comments. So we're thinking around 7 o'clock Eastern this weekend. Most of the time, 80% of the time we go later, like 11 o'clock after the late NBC game. That's not going to be the case this week. A little earlier. around 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. So mark your calendars and join us for all the fun on that. In the meantime, I want to invite you to check out our website, talkbig10.com. We put all of our podcasts there, and it's getting close to, we're inside of 2 months for Christmas. Do some Christmas shopping right there. We got links to all your favorite merchandise from your favorite schools, college spirit. Got it right there. Go ahead and take a look at that. Talkbig10.com. And for free, I always ask, if you don't mind, subscribe, the little subscribe button on this podcast. Then you and I are in the same loop every day with Locked On Big Ten. As soon as we put this out every morning on both audio and video. But if you can subscribe, that would be great. I always ask you. And then an extra mile, if you don't mind sharing, liking, and all that. It really helps us out here at Locked On Big Ten, your teams every day. Coming up, we're going to take a look at the players of the week around the Big Ten. A lot of great players to mention there. And a quarterback change at Iowa, but we're told it's not a quarterback change, so it's confusing. We'll iron it out. And then later on, some great Tuesday tweets. It's all right here as we continue in a minute on Locked On Big Ten. All right, it is time for our Roy Player of the Week. This week, we're going to show some love to Indiana defensive back D'Angelo Pons. He had 2 interceptions against Washington, including a 65-yard pick six. He was phenomenal. We're going to talk about him a little bit more in Tuesday tweets. So once again, D'Angelo Pons. Now, Roy, what is Roy? Roy is the ultimate platform where you get to directly support your favorite athletes financially. Download Roy on iOS or Google Play Store. No middleman, no collective making the decisions for you. You decide who gets the backing, and it's as easy as a few clicks. And with Roy, you know exactly where your money is going. Roy gives you the power to decide who gets your support. So time to put your money where your mouth is. Every contribution from fans like all of us helps keep athletes committed to the team. And if they decide to transfer, guess what? You get your money back. Right? How's that for transparency? So what are you waiting for? Download the Roy app today and make your contribution. Not only are you supporting an athlete's journey, but you're also helping to keep your team strong for next season. So remember, if they stay, you win. If they leave, no worries. You get your cash back. So that wraps up our Roy Player of the Week segment. Don't forget, if you want to support more athletes and be a part of their success stories, Roy is the way to go. Keep those contributions coming, and let's change the game with Roy. Thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and share and follow the Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. Plus, don't forget our website, talkbig10.com. All right, so to watch a Michigan State-Michigan game, it ended in a fight, but it's Michigan State-Michigan. They fight a lot. It's a rivalry. Been there, done that, right? Not condoning it, just observing. But not everybody's happy about it. Michigan State Athletic Director Allar is asking the Big Ten to investigate the fight. The fight started with Michigan tight end Colston Loveland and Michigan State defensive end Anthony Jones. It was after the last kneel down. The clock was going 0, and they started going at it. And then within seconds, players from both sides just boom, converged on the scene. And so Michigan State wants the commish to take a look at that. How about a quarterback change for the Iowa Hawkeyes? You know, we talk about the Iowa quarterback situation a lot on this podcast. It's interesting. They win games, but they don't pass for any yards. Cade McNamara has struggled. Well, last week, the Iowa Hawkeyes made a change in the middle of the game against Northwestern, and they switched from Cade McNamara, who was also dinged up a little bit too, but they switched it up to Northwestern transfer Brandon Sullivan. That's right. He got to go in against his former team, and he led Iowa to 37 consecutive points. Not bad. Seemed like a no-brainer to officially name him the starter the rest of the way, right? Yeah, Kirk Ferentz is always pretty slow to make big changes like that. He was non-committal after the game until now. Sort of. The Hawkeyes released their depth chart on Monday. Sullivan is the number 1 quarterback. What's also interesting as the Hawkeyes get ready for the game against Wisconsin is redshirt freshman Marco Lainez is QB2. Cade McNamara not on the list. What's going on? Again, he was dinged up a little, but we're curious. Is this an injury or is this a benching? Ferentz says McNamara was not benched. He said they wanted to give Sullivan a look anyway. Maybe it was because he was going against his former team. I don't know. And Ferentz is open to using rotating quarterbacks moving forward, which I never think is a good idea. He's going to speak to the media. Kirk Ferentz will Tuesday at 12:45, like he does each and every week. So maybe we'll get some more details there. All right, big weekend. Let's take a look at our Big Ten players of the week. We'll start it out with the offensive player of the week, and that goes to Minnesota quarterback Max Brosmer. Good for him. Coming up from an FCS team, and looks like it's working. It's working. Completed 26 of 33 passes with season highs of 320 yards and 4 touchdowns, leading the Gophers to a 48-23 win over Maryland this weekend. Finished with 26 completions for the second straight game, just one off of his season high 27 at Michigan. So, all right, it's working. Good job. Congratulations to him. It's the first time in a few weeks we haven't had co-offensive player of the week. He's it. That's it. Defensive player of the week. The person we just mentioned in our Roy spot we did a minute ago. D'Angelo Ponds at Indiana. Defensive back, sophomore. Got 5 tackles. Had a half a tackle for loss. Had a pair of interceptions in Indiana's 31-17 win over Washington. One of them was a 65-yard pick six when he intercepted Will Rogers. And that is the longest interception return for a touchdown at Indiana since Jameel Cook Jr. took 196 yards against FIU back in 2015. He also intercepted a second pass in the game in the second quarter, which led to IU's second score of the game and gave him a 14-point lead. And as you know, Indiana wins big by a minimum of 14 points each and every game. We'll take a look at that later, too, in our tweets. Caden Wetjen is the special team quarter of the win over Northwestern. The return is a career long and 7th longest punt return for a touchdown in program history. He is the first Iowa player since at least 1978 with 100-plus kickoff and punt return yards in 3 consecutive games, and the first Big Ten player to accomplish that feat since Maryland's Javon Leake back in 2019. By the way, the last Iowa special teams player of the week is worth the mention was last year in November. Torrey Taylor, the phenomenal punter who would just flip the field every time he punted. And freshman of the week in the Big Ten, Coy Parrish of Minnesota, defensive back. He posted his team and Big Ten leading 5th interception of the season in their win against Maryland. He returned the interception 45 yards, and Minnesota got a field goal after that interception that put the Gophers up 24-0 in the second quarter. He also made 3 tackles and returned 3 punts for 31 yards, including a 20-yarder in that game against Maryland. So congratulations to all those players. We always like to give them shout-outs. A lot of big, great individual efforts along the team efforts as well. Coming up, we're going to do our Tuesday tweets. If you are new to this podcast, we always like to close it out with a creative benchmark at the end of these. Mondays are my Big Ten top 10 observations from the weekend. Tuesdays, we do Tuesday tweets. Wednesdays, we jump in there with my power rankings, the standings as I see them. And also Thursday, we take a look at the schedule on the Big Ten Network with Big Ten Classics and Big Ten Live Action. And then on Friday, we do our pigskin picks. We do the point spreads and game totals on all the games involving Big Ten teams. So today, Tuesday tweets, they're always good. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Talk Big Ten. That's coming up in 1 minute right here on Lockdown Big Ten. FanDuel makes watching games even more fun. You watch some NFL action? Do it with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, the FanDuel Sportsbook app, gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the stats or view live play-by-play. A whole bunch more right there on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thursday Night Football, Halloween. Texans at Jets. Jets are 1.5 favorites. That's ridiculous. Take the Texans in this one. The over-under at 42.5 probably crawls over that as well. But you can make bets like that right there at FanDuel, FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right. We like to do our Tuesday tweets on this segment. I'm going to put them on screen, full screen. If you're audio only, fine. I'll describe them as best I can in detail, and we'll let you know what's going on here. So this first one is from at Gopher Hole, and it is a picture of Coy Parrish on the field. Another one with him doing an interview in studio. But it says, this is a safety school, quote unquote. Safety you, right? Because like Iowa, for example, is known for just sending a line of tight ends to the NFL year in and year out. It's called Tight End University. Well, the secondary for the Gophers is always pretty good. And it's especially good this year. Parrish leads the Big Ten in interceptions. And so why not? Safety University. Here is at Michigan Go blog. And it's a picture of Donovan Edwards in the end zone with his hands on his hips, looking up at the crowd. And it says, Donovan understood the assignment, #Go Blue. What he's really doing is posing as the Paul Bunyan Trophy, which Michigan won. That's what he's doing there. So, yes, Donovan understood the assignment. Very good. Meanwhile, here is a picture of Sharon Moore at Wolverine Chronicle. Sharon Moore is the first Michigan head coach in history to defeat Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State in his first meeting against them. Technically, he was the head coach against Penn State and Ohio State last year when Jim Harbaugh kept getting suspended, and he just beat Michigan State, so that sticks. Here, this is, I retweeted this because it's not going to go well. It's going to cause problems. It's from Swanky, our friends at Swanky Wolverine. He's always very good. He says it's Oregon week. He's got the Oregon Duck mascot, but he's got him wearing a Michigan hat and a Michigan shirt. Yeah, that is gonna cause problems. We're gonna hear it from Swanky. You're gonna hear it from Oregon fans. Believe me, they're very good on my comment section. Like Oregon fans a lot too. Here is from at ESPN College Football. #3 Penn State stays undefeated with a road win over Wisconsin. It's got a picture of them and a 7-0 record, #3 in the country through week 9. Here is a picture from at PFF_college, Indiana cornerback D'Angelo Pons versus Washington. Again, as we highlighted him as our player of the week, 1 catch allowed, targeted 4 times, 2 interceptions. Quarterback had a 0.0 passer rating on passes thrown his way, and his coverage grade was 93.5%. Good job, D'Angelo Pons, for the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. Here's some more undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. Here's Curt Cignetti with his arms raised, superimposed over the last frame shot of the much-beloved Big Ten commercial from Coast to Coast. Instead of Big Ten logo in the background, it says SIG 10. SIG. Curt Cignetti. That's from at IU Barstool. Absolutely. That's fun. Here's a shot at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington before the Washington game. It's from at Jeff Rabjohns. The towels waving. Indiana's Memorial Stadium sold out. #IU football. Yeah, it was a sight to see. They've been sold out their last few games and will be sold out for the rest of the season. And earlier today, that was an earlier game that Indiana beat Washington, and they became the first 8-0 team of the season. So here's a picture of the IU logo from at College on Fox. All right, here's another interesting thing about Indiana. It's from at Big Ten football. Michigan has won every game this season by double digits, and it has a list of their schedule and their scores. There's the 77-3. There's the 56-7 over Nebraska, 31-17. You could aggregate score, points scored and points against. Indiana has outscored its opponents combined 372 to 113. So you may ask, why did they not move up in the rankings this week from number 13? I'll get to that in a minute. Here is from at Oregon football. Dylan Gabriel, picture of him getting ready to throw. It says balled out, #Go Ducks. his stats for the day this weekend: 18 to 26, 291 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Good job by him. Here is the Oregon Duck. Early, well, not early. It's still in the first half. Just sitting there, relaxing, enjoying a beautiful day on the field at Alton Stadium while Oregon is up 28-3. Just enjoying the view. That's from at CBS Sports College Football. Here's a picture of the Duck coming out. Is the Duck going to steal the moon from at Oregon Ducks _ Sports Illustrated? His despicable meme minions costume implies the possibility. He came out and then he had little tiny minions following him out. It was funny. It's a great little video. Check it out. All right, let's get back to this. At Fox College Football, there's a graphic of the AP poll that came out, the top 25. And this is, what do you think? And Oregon, number 1, Georgia 2, Penn State and Ohio State 3, 4, the U getting up at number 5. Now, here's the deal. Indiana was 13th last week, had another impressive win this week, and they don't move up. Here's what's going to happen. And by the way, Illinois dropped to 24 after losing to Oregon. They were 20th. Indiana may have a bit of a situation we'll have to look at here. Even if they go undefeated up to the Ohio State game, could be 10-0 going to that game. Indiana has a lot of wins, a lot of great wins, a lot of double-digit margins of victory. They have not beat a ranked team yet this year. So if Penn State continues to be undefeated and Oregon and Indiana's undefeated, but Indiana has no wins against ranked teams. I mean, Illinois is sitting there at 24. Indiana's at 13. Illinois has wins against 3 ranked teams this year. It could be a problem for the Hoosiers should they continue to win and be talking about playoffs. It could also get themselves involved in some unfavorable tiebreaker situations for the Big Ten championship game. So just throw that out there. We'll probably talk about it in depth on this podcast moving forward sometime soon. Maybe another game or two. We'll see how this plays out if they still remain undefeated, but it is something to keep an eye on if you are an Indiana football fan. All right, that'll do it. Thank you for everybody for joining us here. Many ways for you to interact with me on Twitter, X, at Talk Big Ten. Comments here on YouTube if you're watching on the video. And don't forget our website, talkbig10.com. Be sure to subscribe, please, and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every week. Each and every day, and then live on Saturdays. Don't forget tomorrow, probably looking into that Oregon-Michigan game a little closer, plus all the latest Big Ten news, and we'll have our power rankings as well. Hope you enjoyed it. I can't wait till we meet again next time. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.